All right, everyone, welcome back to the Vault podcast. This is where we break down what's actually working across cybersecurity, AI, and go to market. We don't do any fluff over here. Today I got Quint Boa with me. He's been deep in the trenches, seeing what actually moves deals, what gets ignored, how buyers are actually making decisions in a market that's gotten incredibly noisy. So let's get straight into it, Quint. Quint, give us a quick version of your journey, but more importantly, what that's shown you about how this market actually works.
Good morning, Hani from
Morning.
London. Um, I so I started the video production company Cinema back in the year 2000, and we started producing video on mini DV tape and ingesting it onto computers. And in the year 2000, as you probably won't remember because you were too young, it was only just possible to do that then. And then gradually, as time went by, we were producing video onto CD-ROM and then onto DVD. And yes, we started producing video initially for field marketing companies, for companies giving away little samples of product like Pantene or Actimel yogurt at train stations, and then we gradually got on to dealing with the PR companies direct, shooting for them, and then going to the brands. That's how we sort of went up the food chain, if you like. And then 2008 came along, the financial crisis, and we moved from FMCG into financial because we were working for Bear Stearns at the time, just doing a little bit of work on the side there for them. And then JP Morgan bought Bear Stearns for $1, I believe. And
Yeah.
we're still at the belly of the beast working for JP Morgan. In 2013, another waypoint, we could start doing animation. Initially, it was sort of iterative text. So if I was a talking head, you'd have some text animating along here to try and bring dry metrics to life. And then 2016, Brexit happened, and we opened up in New York because JP Morgan said open up in New York. We lost about a third of our book in Europe because in Europe at that point, we were doing all the videos for the European Commission about
Yeah.
how great it is to be in Europe. And then the UK went ahead and voted out of Europe.
Yeah. Story didn't resonate as well after that, I'm sure.
No,
Right?
it
So
didn't really land that well. So we opened up in Amsterdam, and we managed to retain a few of the accounts with the European Commission. And then in good old 2022, AI came along on the back of COVID, and that nearly took us out. I mean, that was a very difficult time. And then recently we sort of leaned right into AI in the last 24 months, and I mean, about 40% of our inquiries are now AI video
amazing.
production. Mm.
Amazing, amazing. And but what's something you believed earlier in your career, maybe closer to the transition on how, when you started realizing that AI was essentially taking over, what did you believe maybe earlier that you don't believe anymore? We talked a little bit about this, but I'd love to hear kind of, your perspective shift, I guess.
Initially, I thought, well, AI is not going to, it doesn't matter how good AI gets, it's never going to be able to do anything creative.
Yeah,
I thought it was going to come for people who use Excel sheets on a day-to-day basis. We don't use Excel sheets. We play with Premiere and After Effects and that sort of, and initially I thought if it was going to happen, it would probably come for video at first and then go for animation. And I had this metaphor in my head of like a mountain and the tide was going to rise up. And after about, I suppose, around 2040, we'd be in trouble. But little did I know that probably 18 months later, we were really in hot water, and it's difficult. But then Hani, just after that initial thought, I thought, well, another sort of comfort blanket I held on to was that the IP issues and the copyright issues were going to mean that you could never produce it because most
yeah,
of our corporate clients would never touch anything where they couldn't rely on the copyright and rely on that their IP wouldn't be stolen. But
yeah.
gradually that's been taken care of as well. We'll probably touch on that later in the conversation.
Yeah, and that speaks a little bit to the security aspect of, the exploration and the innovation and a lot of what, customers are doing these days. You're with JP Morgan, heavy in compliance, you're targeting finance. I mean, this is the environment, right? So like my next question is basically from where you sit today and with your customers for cinema, and what you've seen kind of over the transition. What's the biggest disconnect between how companies think customers buy and how they actually do?
Well, I think that the challenge that a lot of companies have is they don't know who their audience is. I mean, if we're in the storytelling business, I like to say with my psychology background, we as people, we tell stories about ourselves. We have an inner narrative and we have a narrative with other people. And the same thing happens with video. We're telling stories to people, and those stories have to be creative and relatable in order to land. And I think a lot of the time companies don't realize what their audiences are actually after. And I think that's something that it really behooves us to do, is to be in at the start of when they're making these decisions and really interrogate the brief and say, well, is that really how you're perceived? I mean, you can do a lot of market research around this, qualitative and quantitative market research to try and gauge how you're perceived by the clients. But often it's really big themes like trust, for example. And trust is going to be, I think, a commodity that's really going to be in short supply as things like deepfakes and avatars really start entering sort of mainstream. I mean, they're already here.
Yeah, I fully agreed and well said. I think ultimately, right, getting back to the basics, understanding who ideally you're speaking to, what that profile is just the beginning, right? You're
Yeah.
speaking to the psychology of it. You're speaking to how the storytelling is going to land with them. And I love the trust, very simply, how do we build trust with our customers? I mean, how do you think about this to ensure that they trust those partners that they're working with, in a meaningful manner?
Well, I think right from the get go, you have to be honest and transparent. And so just I would say be yourself. I mean, I think that's a problem. So what we do is in fact, what I do is really really try to work out and get under the skin of what the company's trying to communicate and understand them and do research on what they're trying, who is their customer, what do I think? I've got the advantage because I'm new to their whole proposition, right? Their website, their brand. So I've got a fresh pair of eyes on it. And so I can tell them what I think with my commercial experience of doing it. And then we can have a full and frank conversation about how I think they could express themselves. And it happens, this isn't just about language. This is about in our game, mate, in our game. It's about stylistically. Do you want to make the animation watercolor? Do you want to make it a pencil drawing? Do you want to make it a photorealistic thing? What kind of music do you want? Do you want some drum and bass underneath it? Do you want some classical music underneath it? Do you want, there's all sorts of nuances that you've got that yes, explicitly, you want the voiceover to be saying, welcome to X. Have you ever thought about this, and this? Put in, for example, one sort of ploy would be fears, uncertainties, and doubts into somebody's mind. And,
Yeah,
around security, well, in that case, you need to buy X, Y, and Z. And here are the features and benefits. And, for more information, call here. Um,
yeah.
Sort of call to action. So as explained to me once as an American and said to me once, so what you got to do, Quinn, is you got if you're going to sell them a mousetrap, you got to convince them they got mice first, then sell them the mousetrap. Yes, that's exactly
Yeah,
it.
stick to the pains, right? To those
Yes,
challenges as well.
yes.
Yeah. And then
I went to a thing here, an expo here, in East London about 3 weeks ago. I didn't go to talk to anything about data centers or data center security, but I went to go and see and personally see somebody on another stand. But I got talking to some people who are selling agentic AI to tackle the agentic AI that could be sicked onto your company by a bad actor to try and get through the security. Oh my God, I never thought about that. We need agentic AI to kill the agentic AI that's coming in, but you got to once I knew there was, I mean, as a company, we've been attacked. We've been ransomware attacked once. We've been physically burgled. We've had all sorts of, we've had
I
a
mean, how'd
person.
they on that security side, according to what we're trying to look at here as well. I mean, how did they get in and what was the impact of that? Ultimately, like, it is a scary world where you got to fight AI with AI. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it was back in the day when we just logged on, nothing, we couldn't get any files. And it was an absolute, it was one of those real kind of like crash zoom, oh my God moments. And we had to do initially an audit on what we had got and what we hadn't got and what had disappeared. And thank God, we had got pretty much everything because what we do is we back up onto tape. We have LTO7 tape and we back onto tape. And and we had everything and we managed to restore it safely. But it really was, we'd never had anything happen like that. Strangely, we do videos for cybersecurity companies. For
Yeah.
Hewlett, we started back 12 years ago doing videos on tape for LTO7 tape. If you need to restore your tape, sorry, if you need security, use tape because it holds more information than anything else. Fine. And then it went to hard drives. So, and then it's come back to tape. So we've gone the full circle.
Yeah.
So we use
Yeah.
tape, and we had the hit, and then we managed to restore it all using tape, and then we put up even more firewall walls in order to get around it. But we have to be so careful because we got petabytes of information which we're
Yeah.
dealing with. We cannot afford to have any kind of breach.
Yeah, and I mean, we see that a lot. I'm sure you've seen that a lot. As soon as you've learned the lesson, at the end of the day, it's I hate to say the cliche, but it's not if, it's when, right? These bad actors are getting better and better. Bad actors, I don't know who's bad, who's good, but at the end of the day, they're going after your stuff. They're trying to take it, and that's not good. So you want to protect your stuff. And a lot of times, security is thought of as an inhibitor, but it should definitely be thought of as a growth platform. So, appreciate that perspective. Thanks, Quint. So next question, kind of going a little bit more on the video side, right? There's a ton of opportunity, obviously. Everybody needs video and it's resonating with a lot of customers, right? That's
Mhm.
not going away. Is it a growth market, or do you see more of like a consolidation market in disguise as a growth market? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would say, okay, we're recording this on the 1st of April. So we had a bumper month last month. We had 40 inquiries come through, and 40% of that was AI, which is unheard of. I mean, to put it in perspective, this time last year there was no AI inquiries, and it's been creeping up from there. So the inquiries are the inqu- and they're growing within a framework which is growing itself. So the fact that you can produce AI video production at a reduced cost, between 30 to 70% less than you could do a normal traditional production, is opening it up to new markets. So, for example, charities and NGOs can afford now to produce video and animation, whereas before they couldn't. So that's great. Well, that's great for us because we get to work with charities and feel good about ourselves. But it means that it's not just the Fortune 500 companies that can afford to do a brand video. We can do a brand video for a company with a much smaller budget. So I think obviously this is still in flux. Obviously, with the numbers are changing wildly, but the amount of AI that we're producing is growing up rapidly. It's hockey sticking up, if that's the right expression. But it's happening within a
Very,
part
very American of you, Quint, for the hockey
very
stick
much.
analogy.
I don't know what a hockey stick is, Hani. I have no idea. Is it like a cricket bat? Is that what it is? I have no idea.
Something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a baseball bat that they've bent up. That's right.
Yeah. Well, funny enough, I just learned today about why they called it Wall Street. Do you know why Wall Street is called Wall Street?
No.
Because New York used to be called New Amsterdam. And
Okay.
when the British fought the Dutch, they met head to head at Wall Street, and the Brits won, and we called it New York. I learned that today. How about that?
That's amazing. I'm sure all Americans can appreciate that, especially if you're in New York, that, the Brits basically figured it all out for you. So,
But yeah, so the market for AI is growing, but the pie is growing as well. And there's a big gap in between as well. I mean, as you know, and no doubt everybody listening knows that character consistency is a real problem at the moment. You can't really produce a character with any consistency past for 6-7 seconds using the standard software as it stands. So we still have to lean on traditional animation to create, for example, a character. I don't know, Mickey Mouse, for example. So we create what's called a LoRa first, and then we're able to use that LoRa throughout the animation, and we just use AI to change the backgrounds and to change the environment around the main animation. Similar with a brand, and obviously brand guidelines have got to be strictly adhered to, and we create what's called a LoRa for the brand, and then move the environment around it. It still saves a fortune, obviously.
yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, and to your comment about how you're growing, where you're growing, a lot of these charitable organizations now able to afford the technology.
Yeah.
How do you think about pricing right now? This is a big, hairy beast that a lot of businesses are grappling with, where it obviously depends on your segment, but B2B is typically ROI based, right?
Yeah.
How do you price your service? I mean, it was more expensive previously, obviously, because you weren't working with charitable organizations, but your cost now is, how do you kind of think about it in terms of your cost and the value that you're bringing to your customers?
Well, again, tricky. We do on a cost plus basis. So essentially, what we have a daily rate, and we realize we say, okay, well, it's going to take us this long to do it. You, the client, are going to have to make a decision at various different waypoints. How long is it going to take you to make that decision? And that collaborative process gets us to the end point. So if the client wants a deadline, they've got to have it by April the 3rd. It makes it very simple. We're just going to throw everything at it until it's delivered on that tight timeline. So you can price it that way. Or if you've got a much more open-ended rolling program of 6 months, then it becomes a much more open question about how much it's going to cost. And then you start talking about retainers and things like that in order to get it done. The one and dones are, well, I mean, if you have to do a video for a conference or event, you essentially just price it how long is this going to take, and you have to have a guess as to how long it's going to take for them to get back. And then what you have to do really is be very, very strict about it, right from another Americanism, soup to nuts. You've got to be really sure. Here's what we're going to do. You provide us all the assets, right? You decide on the degree of exposure to copyright you're concerned about, because that's important. So we need to know the provenance of everything you're giving to us if you're concerned about copyright, because we don't want to turn around at the end of it and go, hang on, this is a licensed thing that you haven't paid the license for. So we do storyboard, get all the assets in, decide what we're going to produce using Allura, decide what we're going to produce using the software of choice, whether you want to be really careful around copyright. So we'll use certain softwares we have enterprise licenses for, or if you don't care, because it's for I don't know, say a gala dinner or something,
Yep.
where it's
Yep.
one and done, then you don't really care. There's nothing commercially sensitive in there. Then we can go and use Kling or Seed Dance or something like that, and
Yeah.
then you put a number of hours on that and a production fee, and away you go. That's kind of it. And sometimes
Yeah.
we get stung because the client is an arse, basically. And
Yeah.
sometimes, it goes right for us, and, it swings and roundabouts. But to your point, it is wild. The differentials are wild. I mean, we can sit on a sales call, and right at the end, I lean in very quietly. I say, on the sordid subject of money, do you have a budget ring fence for this? And they go, yes, we have $50 a video. It's like, I'm sorry, you've come to the wrong place.
Man, you got to start with that. So the ICP, right? Or the
Yeah.
qualification up front
Yeah.
helps.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And some of them go, I mean, Annie, I talked to a person. It was a private equity company where you think they know about and they go, well, but this person I was talking this, you love this, right? She wanted to produce The Matrix, right, for $300. But honest to God, she was about 21 years old. I said, have you even seen The Matrix? She said, no.
Yeah.
No, I've never seen The Matrix. I said, well, I said, what are you trying to do? She said, well, in this hand, you got the red pill. This is what we can do for you. And this hand, this is the blue pill. If you carry on doing what you're doing, you're going to end up in real trouble. So you need to have this Neo, is it? It's got the red pill, and you have to do this. I said, it's going to be like 10 grand, but you're using AI. I said, you just quoted I said, Matrix is a $200 million movie, and we're doing it
Yeah.
for $300.
That's funny. That's funny. I mean, yeah, just take the clip and say your story on top of it or put some captions. I think that's the budget,
Yeah. 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 Yes. Yes.
Yeah, but it's funny. I mean, you see that like the younger you go or the more, new into this career world you get, the more apt you are to have higher expectations on what technology can do because you've never seen anything different, right? You don't know that it took $200 million to make a movie. All you're seeing is Sora and, Nano Banana
Yes.
and all these tools essentially do some amazing things. So you're
Exactly.
up here and you're like, make me the Matrix. I got $50, right? But obviously that's not the ideal customer. I guess like, if you're looking to make a video, that's one thing, but what are buyers really trying to solve? right now, right? And high level, the way I'm thinking about it is, are they trying to add more tools or are they looking to reduce complexity after you've addressed kind of the need? And after, you've hit that emotional string to essentially purchase as a decision, what is it about, right?
I think increasingly what it's about is making the complex simple. I think the more AI comes into the mix, the more highfalutin word, the more esoteric what they're doing is. And they really can't get into the nuts and bolts of how it works because honestly, it'll just be, you really struggle to make that come alive. So you're going into the features and benefits of what it does. And so with animation, you have to get into metaphor. Okay, so you're not talking about this server will talk to this server. I'm just thinking one tech client. This server talks to all the other bits of information in the IT setup, and it can even tell you when the other bits of IT are coming to the end of their life cycle, so that your sales guys can go in there, right? I mean, that's literal and on the nose. But what I'll do is I'll say, here's a sequoia. A sequoia has got the worldwide wood. What do they call that? The mycelium mushroom, the mycelium fungal, and all the trees talk to one another, and they all share information, and that's the way in. So you frame it as a metaphor, in this case, a forest, of there being an ecological approach to it rather than a technical one, which that is great for us because we don't have these black obelisks of servers who are talking to one another, sending data. I mean, so we can do, beautiful trees and flowers and plants, and then the information passing through I want to say mycelium, but it might be,
Psyllium, I think it is. Yeah.
yeah. Is the M silent? Mm.
Yeah, I
You're
think
gonna
so.
chat GPT it.
I'm looking it up right now. So, yeah, mycelium.
So the information is in the tree. It's talking to the other trees through the mycelium, and that information is coming back. So there's an ecosystem there that people can relate to, and it chimes with, it lands with the audience in another way other than we have these black obelisks. I mean, you try and film a black box, and tell somebody that's going to alter your entire, your ROI or your cost per click or whatever it is.
It's
It's
not
like,
what it used to be. At these conferences with Cisco and Palo Alto networks, everybody used to crowd around a black box and like ooh and ah around all the little knobs and switches. And if you were a cloud company coming into that, you're just like, why are they looking at this box, right? So here we are now, basically saying, you still need the box, but how are you going to essentially tell the story around it? So I love
yeah.
that. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And metaphor is again, without getting too highfalutin, but as apes, as storytelling apes, that we use metaphor and allegory and symbolism in order to communicate these ideas, and it's full of little micro cues, and there's the explicit message. So you have the forest, and then you have the way that forest is made. Well, you don't have a forest at midnight because you're into Cinderella territory or Snow White territory. One of them was running through a forest. I'm not sure which one. Anyway, you don't want a spooky
Probably
forest.
both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you want a bright forest with bunnies and butterflies and the dappled sunlight onto the forest floor, and you want music to, right, and play
Yeah,
with it.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah. It all has to come together. But I love the analogy, right? I see here someone refers to it as the wood wide web,
the
linking
wood
plant
wide
root
web.
systems. The wood
Yeah,
wide web.
yeah, yeah.
But right, yeah, mushrooms and trees, they talk. These data centers are talking. People talk. It's a lot of the basis of trust, right? So you get referrals, you get understanding of who you're going to be working with. You get, I mean, that's an extremely strong avenue. So how in this world do you scale that? Like, I guess, do you automate trust, or how do you, I guess, allow for that kind of an ecosystem, build your business more effectively than the next person next to you, right?
How do we do it? It is, yeah. I mean, how do you scale it? We have scaled it in the past, just literally by acquiring more clients and scaling up with animators and producers and building it like that. That's really the only way. Then your next challenge is to keep the ethos of the company solid. So, as I was wont to say, that we're artisans, not artists. I mean, I always saw video and animation production as another form of communication, and I was getting away from the art side of it. And for the longest time, we were the only company talking like that. A lot of the other production companies were doing corporate videos to get the money together to make their short to take it to Sundance, whereas we were very much long-term strategic partners with the clients that we had. And that did us proud, really, because we stayed within those organizations. And then what happens is, within an organization, once you have a vendor number, you then maybe start working with sales and marketing, and then HR say, you know what, we really need to have a new video to do some training and development, or you go to health and safety, this is why you have to wear a hard hat, or you go to, oh, hang on, we've got investor relations coming up, we really need to interview so and so forth. And that's not just happening in New York, that's happening in Bangalore, and it's happening in Brisbane, and it's happening, in Birmingham here. Can you either fly a producer out, or can you um, have you got an office there that can supply us? And you grow that way, geographically
Yeah.
and in terms
Yeah.
of headcount.
No, that makes sense. Now, obviously, you go on LinkedIn, you go onto these platforms, you see every ad known to man coming to you about video. Here's what we do. Here's how we do it. Here's where you advertise. If you stripped away the marketing, how many companies are actually meaningfully different?
Well, in terms of our game,
Yeah. And
yeah,
yeah.
shooting from the hip. I mean, I don't think there are many production companies. I mean, I'm talking about a handful who are as invested in AI as much as we are. I think that there are a lot of freelancers out there who are making a very good job of working for themselves, but any company has got to be aware of the risks of going with an independent trader like that. I mean, I think that's a point of differentiation at the moment. I think there's some production companies that go for the £1 million commercials still. There's still this, I mean, really it's quite bizarre. And by the time this goes to air, it'll all be over. But there is still a really top, I mean, right up there, right at the very, very top, there's still this holy trinity of client, production company, advertising agency that's going around and around with $1 million, multi-million dollars, going around. We know them. I know some of the people, and it's like looking back in time, and
Yeah.
they that that's still going on up there now. So that's a point of difference, and I'm not sure how much
Yeah.
longer the business model can sustain itself.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, we down here look up and wonder what's going on and how this flow is happening at the end of the day. But like, where should the differentiation actually come from? I mean, these systems are built over decades. You have relationships, you have people, you have tools that might not be as relevant, right? But and then you have like the processes. Like, where in your opinion should the differentiation come from now?
Well,
Right?
I think it's one of them is demographics. I mean, if I did, as I did on the plane the other day, I wrote down the age of all of our top clients. The average age was 32. So we have a 32-year-old now who's got, a $500,000 budget. I mean, I'm I'm getting on. I'm a bit long in the tooth, but the average age of my company is 26. So
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm at least double that and more. Unfortunately, look at this shirt. Look how hard I'm trying to look young.
Well, oh, that's what you're trying to do? Okay.
Oh
All
yeah,
right.
I've got my slippers on here and a pipe on the go on the side.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, but yeah, like getting practical, and that's the world we live in today. I mean, there's a lot coming out these days. There's, kids these days. So, what's a tool platform or approach that actually surprised you with ROI? Like, are you using anything where you were legitimately impressed with the results?
God was, and the thing is, every day something's coming out. At the
Yeah,
last month, we've had things coming out that that really is astonishing. I mean, just the latest iterations of Seed Dance and of VO and are really amazing. The photorealism we're getting now, the ability to have character consistency over longer periods of time, it's all amazing.
yeah,
But I mean,
yeah,
that's good. That's why I think that the new frontier is going to be copyright and IP, getting back onto security, because I think when we get to the time when it's VO8 and Seed Dance 6, i.e., probably in about 20 minutes,
exactly.
the new frontier is going to be, I want my security protected. I mean, we're working with a company at the moment who's got 21 animation characters, and they want to know that the company they're working with can protect that IP. We're not going to get, well, first, obviously, we're not going to get, cyber attacked and lose the IP, but we're not going to, when the models that we're using aren't going to be allowed to retrain on any of the generations that we're doing. With Higgsfield, for example, you have to tick a box to say that any generations you do is Higgsfield's property and they can do whatever they want. So if I'm going to do, I don't know, Felix the cat for Purina, I don't want my cat ending up in some video for God knows what, in 6 months' time.
Yeah.
We can do
Yeah.
that now. And we can also protect copyright with the clients. If that's what the client wants, that's what we can provide. And I think that's really, that's the important thing now. And I
Yeah.
think at the moment there's still this thing about, oh, we can't use it because it's IP and it's copyrighted. But no, we can do it. We can do it
Yeah.
now.
Well, I mean, it seems like anybody can do anything they want these days in this world, right? So at the end of the day, how you're doing that deliberately, how you're targeting the specific countries and the trademark and patent laws, how you're kind of ingrained in that system, I think is critical. We see it obviously at Agentics. I mean,
Yeah.
GTM as our offering, it's about secure GTM. It's not about GTM in a silo. It's not about, selling in a silo. You want to go out there and you want to grow your business, but you don't want to do it at the risk of hindering everything and getting shut down. And I think that's the same concept here. It's really security ingrained in your product versus, hey, let's bolt it on afterwards. Or, yeah, we do it because it's secure video generation or secure copywriting or infringement protection. That's what you're kind of like starting with, which is very important. And I think you're way ahead of the game. So I love that, Clint. And um, now a little bit on that GTM side. So what are you seeing with AI? Is it actually helping with your execution? Is it helping with your pipeline? Or is it creating more noise, right? Like a lot of times we're seeing both. It depends what you're doing, but how are you seeing kind of AI in your, I guess, like demand generation or sales world?
Yeah. It's in the sales world. First of all, we're always learning. So we have probably 10% of our time is taken up looking and evaluating new bits of software. That includes video generation software, but also goes on to sales software as well, because we can automate some of this stuff. I don't particularly like it, but we do explore it. And then in terms of producing content, that improves in a sort of a an into what's the word I want to use? Not in a linear way. It suddenly there's some new product comes out, we test it, it's like, oh my goodness, this does this. And also the other thing is discontinuous innovation. So you have this and then you have this, and by themselves they do some interesting things. Actually, you can put them together through an API or something, and suddenly you've really got something that's actually setting the world on fire.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
yeah, for sure.
And the use cases differ. I mean, literally now, we're working a woman, sorry, called Gina Rippon, who's got a fantastic book out called Gendered Brain, which is talking about autism and how autism isn't spotted in girls because all the testing is done in boys. And so she said to me, here's my PowerPoint deck. This is what I go around the world lecturing on. Can you show me what the camouflage effect is for girls, i.e., they invent themselves depending on who they're around. So they're never themselves. They're constantly reinventing themselves. She had a 52 PowerPoint slide deck to explain that. And so, I mean, so take that PowerPoint deck, put it into an LLM. Okay, what what is the theme here? How can I produce a storyboard? How can we represent this physically? And you've got a video, honestly, within an hour, which I can say to, look, this is the basis of how we do it. And she's come back and gone, my God, of course. Now, see, she's coming. She would never. And that this was not a chargeable thing. This is just something we did as a, to. But this is the point where she's coming from a position she doesn't even understand the first thing about our industry, but we can create that 52 PowerPoint slide and obviously this was just a V1. We could go to town on it, make something really nice for her that she can use as a keynote speech, put away the 52 PowerPoint slides, and leave the room open for more Q&A,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
healthcare, which is great on women with autism, girls with autism.
I mean, it really speaks to how parallel or niche expertise really supports everything you're doing today, right? And I think for you, Quint, as a, psychologist or psychotherapist, I'd love to understand from you kind of how that helps in your delivery because it sounds very connected in this type of story that you just mentioned.
Yeah, well, I think it goes. I mean, we're all, as Yuval Harari says, we're all, and everybody else, we tell stories. Our sense of self comes from the stories that we tell ourselves, our inner narrative, and that comes, without getting into child development, that comes from child development, and we end up with our sense of self. Our character and our behavior stems from that. And then we project that into the world, and we co-create our reality with the other people, like you and I are doing now, with stories. And what we're doing is we're taking those stories and we're telling stories about a product or a service, and we're making it creative and relatable and engaging, and ultimately this is commerce usually, so we're looking for a call to action, and but if not, we're trying to get over a complex idea, which in ways which are, without making them simplistic, certainly allowing people to handle the complexity of what's going on. Animation's always been good at that. If something's too big, too small, or too complex, you have to go to animation. So if it's too big, a planet crashes into the Earth and splits off, then there's the moon. You can't show that with. If it's too small, you've got the COVID pathogen and you've got a microphage, taking out the virus. If it's too complex, you have, I don't know, since we're here today, I mean, the Straits of Hormuz and where the oil tanker's going, where can't they get through? You have to show that as a graphic, as an animation, because you can't show it on a pamphlet or a book. And where that
Yeah,
really matters is in this day and age when you've got an attention span of 8 seconds and somebody's on social media and you're trying to get that idea across really quickly.
yeah,
Or if you've got, I mean, just a blizzard of data, because to your point, sometimes AI creates so much information, so many data points, and so many metrics that you have to have another AI just to, get that kaleidoscope, a mosaic of information, and put it into a narrative that people can understand. And how are
yeah,
they going to
yeah.
understand it best? They're going to understand it using a visual medium.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I'm a visual learner, as they say. I don't know if that's a cliche as well, but absolutely need the video to learn. Yeah, I mean, reading is a commodity. We got a lot of podcasts these days, but I see you have books behind you, and so do I. That
Yeah, yeah.
doesn't really, nobody talks about that anymore. And education is key, right? Everything is new. That's what this podcast is about. Everything is new. Sharing best practices is critical. So one thing we explore on the podcast is education is a part of your sales process. You've talked a lot about a lot of things, Quint. Mainly as well, the fact that simplifying this complexity for your customers is critical, right? And I completely agree. Simplification should be at the key of everything you do in a complex world. Now, I mean, how do you educate your buyer when they're already overloaded? There's so much going on with AI. There's so much happening in general, right, around them. How do you bring them along the journey to understand a little bit about more about the technology? They may assume they do understand, but as part of your process, how do you do that?
Well, that's one of the challenges, because sometimes we're dealing with people who understand it and have got a real keen interest in it. They really want to know the difference between VO and the difference between Nana Banana and Cling, and some people don't. Just they don't. They just want the sausage. They don't want to know how the sausage was made, and so you have to try and meet them where they are.
Yeah, yeah,
But I think also that sometimes it depends on how we're given the brief. If the brief has come to us from a marketing department and they know what they want to do, and sometimes, Hani, nowadays they will give us a commercial. They'll say, "This is the commercial we want to produce," and it's a V1. It's a very
awesome.
around the ages.
Yeah,
But look, you think, "Oh my good God, they're doing this stuff themselves. That's nuts."
yeah,
And yeah, we can improve on that. But if that's what you want to do, fine. It takes all the it's a much more cost-effective job for them because they've done it
yeah,
in-house. But on a
yeah.
security tip, Hanny, and this is one I'd like to ask you, what we're finding is that people are, um, they're trying to use Microsoft Copilot at work and they're not getting the results they want. So they'll go back and they'll put the information into an LLM, or they'll use Kling. And so that, how often, I mean, blood runs cold, but how often is that commercially sensitive information leaving the office? Somebody's got the best of intentions and they're punching commercially sensitive information into an LLM that, where's that information going to go? I mean, are there any stats around that? Is that something that you come across?
all the time. And the
Really?
answer is scary. Uh, I mean, the stat that sticks with me is above 80% of breaches are caused by employees and practices and behaviors and things they're doing internally in the organization, as well
Wow.
as the policies being inconsistent across all of these tools, right? 80% plus. It's not, yes, you're getting attacked, but they're getting through because of something somebody did, a behavior internally. And obviously LLM use is massive, and there's a lot of misunderstanding around where the data is going and how it's kind of being taken or not in these environments, right? So you need, and there's a ton of tools. I mean, you mentioned Copilot, like a lot of these are Gen AI, and you're looking at basically seeing what's happening. So the first challenge is, how do we see that somebody's plugging something into the LLM? Right?
Yeah.
And then that's one problem. And half the CISOs of the world don't even want to know. They don't even want to admit how much stuff from their company is going there kind of unmanaged or unseen. And then the second part of it is, you don't want to hinder business. So from an insights perspective, what should be going into that LLM and what shouldn't? You don't want to make everybody angry that they can't use ChatGPT and shut it all off, or maybe you do. That needs to be a deliberate decision. And then thirdly is action. So how do you actually prevent it? How do you use the technology, right, to actually, like, Copilot's not going to say, wait a minute, this is sensitive data.
Yeah.
Don't put it into this. And
Yeah.
it's not going to take a screenshot, and it's not going to notify the CISO or anybody in the organization. So how do you act on it and block it, right? And so those are the areas that we look at in cybersecurity quite often, and it's a big topic of conversation, as you can imagine. So
Yeah.
hope that answers your question, but it's
Yeah.
it's
That's
rampant. It's
amazing. That's
rampant.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah,
These
yeah,
God, well, so that's really interesting, and that's going to stay with me. That's an amazing statistic, but you can see
yeah.
why. I mean, it's not, it's the problem there. It's not malicious. It's just somebody trying to do a good job, come up with the answers, or figure
Right.
something through, and using their personal account to do it, and they're not thinking. Doesn't it? In a way, it goes back to the early days of Facebook. All of the LLMs could only train on the data that they were given. They didn't have the data until Facebook came along and everybody started uploading all their personal stuff. And then
Mm-hmm.
they knew what a cat was because they had a billion cats to choose from. It wasn't until,
Correct.
and
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that will continue. We would call it shadow IT. It's like things that are happening, you don't even know it's happening, right?
yeah,
That's the most dangerous, like, growing threat right now, is what people are doing that we don't know. Uh,
yes,
so it's a scary concept, especially when the attackers are getting way more sophisticated. To your point on that conference, any Joe Schmo with a laptop can basically download hacker software and say, go hack these companies. And as long as you have the money and the intent to do these terrible things, you can
yeah,
figure out a way to do them, right?
yeah,
So it's a scary world out there, whilst we're not that protected, I guess. You
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
so a metaphor for that, if you could you give me a metaphor for that? I mean, without using a castle.
Yeah, a metaphor for shadow IT.
Yeah, how about that?
Basically, if you're using something similar to what we were talking about in a mycelium forest, let's say, right?
Okay.
It's going to be a second dimension, or an alternate part of the forest that you can't access. It's bright where you are, but it's very dark with the same exact trees right there, right? And it can
Okay.
take over very quickly. I was on the fly. I don't know if it makes sense, but it's a,
It's some sort of invasive shrub or like a
yeah,
vine weed or
a
a,
it's growing without you even knowing it. That's a good one, right? Like, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
it's
Some
not bad.
weeds that you don't want kind of popping up everywhere, they're there, but maybe they look like flowers. I don't know. They look like flowers to begin with. You don't see them. But
Yeah,
eventually you realize they're weeds and they're taking over the trees and everything, and you have to do something about it, but it's too late at that
yeah,
point, you know?
yeah. And then you
So,
got to try and
yeah,
get rid of just to extend it. You have to get rid of the weeds without attacking the infrastructure that you spent so much time and money investing in.
exactly.
Yeah,
It's worth nothing at that point. So,
right.
yeah, Quint, I mean, just wrapping up a little bit, here I'd love our viewers to know where they could reach out to you if they want to find you, they have any questions. What's the best way to get in touch?
Well, yeah, so the company is Cinema, so SYNIMA, cinema.com. But if you want to reach me personally, I'm at quintboa.com. And yes, I'm just do come along and ask away, or on Instagram at Quint Boa, or LinkedIn, Quint Boa. Yeah, any of those. And happy to answer questions or discuss any projects you've got, obviously. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Quint, thank you so much. I mean, this is the game right now. Less noise, more clarity, and actual execution. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspective. That was a lot of fun. We'll
Thanks,
talk
Hani. That was
soon.
a lot of fun. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks
Bye.
a lot. Bye bye.